Long ago, before the dawn of man, existed the people of the sea. They waited for man till he was ready to teach the way of the water. They possessed sacred knowledge. They were the bringers of civilization. They taught man how to be kings and build kingdoms. But like all kings, one kingdom was not enough. Man strayed into land to grow and soon forgot the people of the sea. War broke out amongst the men, and soon spear became arrow, arrow became bullet, and bullets became bombs. They misused this sacred knowledge, forgetting the people of the sea. And so, they disappeared. Or did they?
Now, before we fully submerge ourselves in the deep, mystical lore of mermaids, I think we should rewind a bit and start at the beginning. At least the start of the confusion for all of us, where we all got it wrong. And who do we have to blame for that? Mainstream media, my friend. You see, it all started with this idea, The Little Mermaid. And no, not the movie, the book. Written by Hans Christian Andersen in 1837, it was a tragic fantasy of a mermaid longing for an immortal soul, falling in love with a prince she saved, and enduring pain and sacrifice by losing her voice from having her tongue cut for legs in return, making every step feel like walking on glass, facing a grim fate of turning into sea foam unless she wins the prince's love, which she fails to do. You see, the prince mistakes another woman for saving him and marries her, bringing the mermaid to her demise. In reality, Hans' tale was an allegorical expression reflecting his own heartbreak over his friend Edward Cullen's marriage. But nonetheless, in 1990, Disney adapted this idea, choosing to keep the idea of a sea creature falling in love with the son of land, setting a different view of mermaids contrasted with their nefarious nature recited throughout history. And fun fact, folks, those VHS tapes are selling today for thousands due to the hidden male genitalia on the cover art. You see, Hans' book set the tone for Disney and many other writers to follow, washing away the idea that mermaids were evil creatures and despised sailors, and made us believe that they adored us from a distance or that their intentions were pure and rooted in curiosity. They had incomparable beauty with majestic qualities, and certainly Disney didn't finish at The Little Mermaid. They wanted to push this idea amongst the adults. Remember a movie called Splash? You see, this 1984 classic romance comedy takes place at Cape Cod, which told a story of a boy who was saved from a drowning, beautiful mermaid as a kid, seeking him out 20 years later, falling in love amidst the interventions of scheming scientists. And well, if you're like me, you too get tired of sugarcoating. And you would have done what I did too. And that was cast out the fantasy about mermaids being mythical women who fawn over silverware and human legs. You see, it was time that we all started seeing the truth. And who best to do so shortly after Hans's book? This guy, Sir James Matthew Barrie. In 1904, Barrie published Peter and Wendy, a story about Peter Pan, a boy who can fly and never grows up, in his adventures in Neverland. Barrie included mermaids in his fantasy, but didn't depict them the same way as Hans. curious, benevolent creatures. You see, his were vicious, intelligent predators who lured men and women into the sea, never to be seen again. This rendition matched legendary folklore mermaids. Barrie's mermaids lived in lagoons, had lovely voices, and would transform into dark figures at night, highlighting themes of enchantment. But in order to get a better understanding of mermaids or sirens, we had to look beneath the surface to a much more ancient time. 3000 BC, ancient Sumer, other known as southern Iraq. It relates to the story of a half-man, half-fish called Oannes, who walked out of the sea and taught the people of Mesopotamia the secrets of culture. He brought them the knowledge of letters, sciences, and all kinds of techniques. He also taught them how to found cities, build temples, create laws. He revealed to them how to work the land and gather fruits. After teaching mankind all these secrets, Oannes leaps back into the sea and swims away. In this myth, ancient storytellers have preserved some memory of the arrival of Sumerians landing en masse by boat and bringing with them their advanced urban culture. Is it possible that the Sumerians came to Mesopotamia not by boat, but actually walking out of a land that was now at the bottom of the sea? Following in their footsteps of their predecessors, less than 2,000 years later in northern Mesopotamia were the Assyrians. Carrying these religious myths and mysteries of the Sumerian Empire, they too worship a fishman deity with uncanny resemblance to what Oannes was depicted as. The typical mermaid, but with a Babylonian face. Dagon, associated with the gift of agriculture, fertility, and grain, often depicted with fish legs and walking on land, telling the people of Mesopotamia he was sent by the gods to help humanity after the Great Flood, surprisingly aligning with biblical myths of a great flood resetting civilization. Dagon was also heavily associated with dwelling beneath the Euphrates River, aligning with another biblical myth referencing the river's role in end-time prophecy. The book of Revelation detailing 4 angels bound to the bottom of the river, awaiting its drying up to ascend and kill 1/3 of the world's population. You know what makes all this extraordinary spooky? Is that 2022 they discovered caves and tunnels connecting different bodies of water underneath the Euphrates River. Could this have been used by Dagon and other fish deities? Have you ever heard of Atargatis? The Syrian fish goddess of water, fertility, and protection. Born immortal, she accidentally caused a death to her lover. Overcome with shame, she threw herself into water, and the gods transformed her into a mermaid, creating the first original mermaid legend. But what about the supreme mother goddess of Taino culture, Atabe? Also the goddess of fertility, fresh water, and the moon, was often depicted as a squatting amphibious woman. Heavily associated with the water, her physical appearance is a giant mermaid. Also giving light to the Caribbean folklore of the mermaid Akaia. Cursed to live in the sea, but breathe air, she was more like a whale than half fish. There were beings like Olukan in West Africa, depicted as a majestic merman with a trident and anchor. And even Gong Gong, the Chinese water god depicted with a human face, with a copper iron forehead, red hair, a serpent's body or tail. He was responsible for great floods, but also eventually revered as a water master. His story explains natural phenomena like a river flow. But I think the most famous of them all was Poseidon, the ancient Greek god of the sea, depicted as a merman with a trident like his Olympian brother Zeus, was a significant Greek figure in lore. Worshipped by sailors and coastal communities, one thing that stands out to me amongst these deities are their tridents. Often depicted in art with their staffs, it begs the question, is this where their power lied? Were these more enchanted staffs like the ones wizards used? Or something more advanced? Something purely scientific? Devices that can control oceans, earthquakes, and other weather phenomena? It brings the question, was this mermaid technology or was this alien technology? You know, something as simple as switching a switch for them. was changing reality for us. And with all the myths and legends of sea deities, they had all these four common denominators amongst them. Eventually, it became impossible to ignore that all of these stories had the same continuity amongst them. These beings were either bringing gifts or advanced knowledge and technology. They were either amphibian or reptilian, and they always lived in the ocean. I think it was time we started connecting the dots. If all these different civilizations date back thousands of years and speak of advanced people of the sea, bearing gifts and ancient knowledge, then how old were they? And if they were already centuries ahead of us, what other technology could they have possessed? Where would they have gone after they went back to the ocean? I had so many questions. I needed more answers. I needed to know for myself, so I decided to take a deeper dive. The first thing I did was start with the places around me. After researching all the history and activity on the East Coast, I discovered something critical to my search for mermaids. You see, the first sighting Sauce 90 had was north of Nantucket and near New Bedford, Mass. Literally right next to where the movie Splash takes place. Coincidence? I think not. And less than 2 hours from where I regularly kayak, which is also close to where I depart from, in the Long Island Sound. Now, if we move down, you guys see this strip here of land that looks like a hand flicking a booger? Well, that booger is where I kayak to. It's called New Shoreham. And the same day I had the sighting, I decided to kayak as close to Nantucket as possible, and right around this area is where I had my sighting, which was less than a month after Sauce's. Probably about 2.5 weeks, if you want to be exact. But that wasn't my only discovery. You see, I found out that this area all along the East Coast, especially around the Gulf of Mexico, was a hot spot for mermaid and UFO sightings. The further you go down, the freakier it gets. Hence the Bermuda Triangle, as well as being in this area, including where Columbus had his sighting of mermaids near the Caribbean. In fact, if you zoom out, the closer you are to the equator around the world, the better your chances of being near high activity with mermaids. This whole spot was the Mecca, but I want to show you guys across the globe other good spots. Anywhere over here in the equator, you are bound to see mermaids. Anywhere over here, near Greece, you are bound to see mermaids. If you come down this area, you will see mermaids, just like Tony Wood saw in Seychelles, Africa. They love warm currents and beautiful oceans. Stuff like this area, aka the Gulf of Mexico. Now, what I found out about the Gulf of Mexico is that it bears something very important to this whole thing. It's called the Gulf Stream. And literally, this is the Route 60 of the Atlantic Ocean, carrying a warm current up North Atlantic at 5.6 miles per hour, transporting more water than all the world's rivers combined. This made me believe that this had possibly been a source for mermaids to travel since the days of ancient times, or even closer to us in history. And could Gulf of Mexico have been a breeding ground for them, and they were spreading across the sea? Why was this such a hot spot? And why were there so much activity on the East Coast? (1492). Spanish voyager Christopher Columbus embarks from Spain on a journey overseas, sailing towards the west in search of the New World, the Indies, for access to its riches, gold, spices, and silk, bypassing the costly land routes controlled by the Ottomans, and to spread Christianity. But Before Columbus can reach land, he would be greeted by another group of people. You see, Columbus wrote in his journal, "Yesterday, when I was going to Rio del Oro, I saw 3 sirens that came up very high out of the sea. Not as half as beautiful as they are painted, since in some ways they have a face like a man." January 9th, 1493. But this wasn't the only event that took place on the East Coast involving mermaids. Fast forward to 1842. In New York City, something fishy was happening along the East Coast again, with Bridgeport, Connecticut native Phineas Taylor Barnum, better known as P.T. Barnum, America's Greatest Showman. P.T. was already greatly renowned for his fantastical freak shows and museums. Opening his newest venue in New York City, Barnum showcased all types of attractions, his famous being the Fiji Mermaid, which you could have seen back then for 50 cents, the equivalent to about $20 today. Although these were just tails of carp sewed to the bottom of a half-mummified monkey's torso, this was enough to keep the museum running for over 12 years, and possibly further. But that was until July 13th, 1856, began the ending of Barnum's ringleading. After years of displaying the Fiji Mermaid, he decided to take it a step further by claiming to have a real mermaid, as big as a man, for showing on July 15th, 1856. But just 2 days before the grand event, Barnum's Museum had a devastating fire, one of the worst in New York City history. With all kinds of animals fleeing from the windows to escape the fire, there were reports of beluga whales boiling in tanks, elephants running down the street, and even newsprints of police having to shoot tigers dead in the street. Luckily, the world still would be able to get a glimpse of Barnum's real mermaid. After decades of speculation and doubt, new evidence resurfaced, not just the flyers for the event, but an actual photograph of the mermaid that was buried away in the National Archives by an unknown source. The image depicted a humanoid figure, pickled and encased in some type of fluid, holding an eerie gesture towards the viewer. If you take a closer look at the detail, the texture of the skin is peeling. You can even see the ridges on the skin, the crescent atop its head. You can even see muscles within these webbed hands, tendons. You can even see fingernails. What you are looking at is indeed a real photograph of a real mermaid. Now keep in mind, this photo was taken in 1865. It wasn't until 1927 that cinema was able to create special effects like Metropolis, and this was the peak of the cinema at the time. But there was one thing that intrigued me more than anything about P.T. Barnum's mermaid, and it was this. Do you see the bulge on the tail of that mermaid? It looks like a bone is causing that, which made me think of one thing. The bone Sauce 90 discovered on his ship. The alignments were remarkably fitting. The same exact shape of the bone fit perfectly where the tail and the possible joint would have been for this bone to exist. Even the curvature in the fin matched perfectly with the dimensions of the bone. Did a TikToker pick up one of the most important paleontology finds in human history? Did Sauce 90 have physical evidence of an ancient species.
Where are you?
What somebody just asked, did I post the videos of them calling before they bombed the ocean recently? I did this after. I posted all those videos after and actually while, because one of those videos I posted was in June. And yeah, in June they were doing bombing down in the Gulf of Mexico. So yeah, so it was kind of around the same time where they were bombing in the Gulf of Mexico was where I heard those siren sounds. And the thing is, the government scientists that were on my boat were stationed in the Gulf of Mexico before they got there. They were stationed in the Gulf of Mexico at the beginning of June, which was when they were doing all this testing on the water, dropping those bombs. But they were doing bombing down in the Gulf of Mexico. But they were doing bombing down in the Gulf of Mexico. But they were doing bombing down in the Gulf of Mexico.
Now, what's weird about this list is that I created it back in the beginning of 2022, and it's 2026, and this list is still relevant today. All of these events and Sauce's encounters were connected, and they were bringing me down a deeper rabbit hole. Let's take a look at where I started with the rabbit hole timeline. At the top of our timeline, we have the Legend of the Sea People, where most people have common knowledge of the merfolk from myth and legend, which would bring you to start looking into it. Basically, you'll start to see it's in modern day culture, keeping the idea alive, but confusing us. And then you have Hollywood, fueling that illusion. But then you go deeper and you start to discover that these creatures were associated with the fallen ones. And then you start to look for real life events. Stuff like Columbus, hidden in history and masked by a lie that he actually saw manatees and not real mermaids. But what about P.T. Barnum? P.T. Barnum was also considered a cover-up as well. Why would his museum burn just 2 days before revealing a new mermaid? And surprisingly, the deeper I looked, the more I saw Trump play a role, especially with the Gulf of Mexico.
Out of the well and showering the rig. Before anyone can grasp what is even happening, the worst case scenario occurs. Oil and gas escapes from the wellhead and rushes up to the platform, where the gas explodes.
We're looking at new pictures from the scene.
This catastrophic event led a desperate search lasting over 24 hours for 11 crew members. Unfortunately, they would never be found and presumed dead. And within the same year, Horizon had a second oil rig fire, contributing to the pollution of the Gulf. Luckily, no lives were claimed, but that wasn't the last time an oil rig of the Gulf would claim a life. In 2021, Pemex lost 2 workers to another fire. And who ignored all this and pushed for more oil drilling in the Gulf?
Reserves so important
You
to
guessed
the
it.
U.S.? Analysts
Mr.
say
Trump.
it's not just that Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, sitting on over 300 billion barrels of crude, but it now has the potential to eventually reclaim its status as one of the world's top oil producers, with a type of oil that fits America's needs and capabilities to a T.
Venezuela's particular kind of crude oil, which we call extra heavy, is a perfect match for the sophisticated oil refineries that the U.S. energy companies have invested in and built in the Gulf Coast.
In the hours after Maduro's capture, President Trump made this claim about Venezuela's oil trading history with America.
It was the greatest theft in the history of America. Nobody has ever stolen our property like they have. They took our oil away from us. They took the infrastructure away.
Experts say it's not true that Venezuela stole America's oil. The oil itself, they say, was always Venezuela's. But one analyst says part of Trump's claim is correct, that Venezuela did expropriate some of the assets and infrastructure of American oil companies in Venezuela.
Now, why was Trump such a pivotal figure in the Gulf of Mexico? I mean, back in 2022, he was crazy over oil, and now in 2026, he's kidnapping presidents to attain that oil. He even took a emergency landing in the Gulf of Mexico at one point. Was he aware of the activity under the ocean? And was he trying to eradicate the life that was there?
The DP Oil Company today drilled into the moon and appears to have caused even greater problems.
Uh-oh. I have a feeling we better get into our costumes again, guys.
Tom, the DP Oil Company has had another drilling accident. This time they appeared to have unleashed the dark and mighty Cthulhu. The rise of Cthulhu from another dimension brings about 3,000 years of darkness, Tom, where we will all be driven to madness and made to serve as Cthulhu's cultist slaves.
You know, after going through the list, we start to notice Sauce, the Gulf, and Trump were all connected. You see, Sauce would have never had his encounter if he wasn't on the sea during the chaos. You know, the chaos that was happening in the Gulf of Mexico, the same chaos that Trump's administration was fueling, no pun intended. But in order for us to see where Sauce really fit into the story, we had to start at the beginning of Sauce's event.
Mr. Krabs? Huh, Mr. Krabs? Tell him, Mr. Krabs. Actually, you know what, homie? I'm gonna throw you back in your ocean. Because we're not catching you. Be free. Be free, homie. Sometimes you gotta let him free, you know? Sometimes you just gotta let him roam free. Let's just walk right back. Let's see if we can find... Oh! Yo! Oh, hell no! Wait, nah! No fucking way! Wait, I just threw this overboard. Y'all saw me throw it overboard. This... Are you fucking kidding me? That did not...
Was that the beginning of Sauce's encounter with the lore of the mermaids? Peering over the side of the ship to see what threw the crab rack. Were the mermaids at work already?
Whole fishing trip. Heard no noises whatsoever.
Until we got into unload. Peep this video. Crazy. At the docks, though? Hey, yo, you hear that? I know what the fuck that is. I know what the fuck that is. That bitch followed me the fuck in. And we just out here. We're chilling. We're out here chilling. I hear it. I hear him. Where's she at? What the fuck is that noise, bro? What is that noise? Where are you? That's crazy. That's nuts. That's crazy. The government is legit here. Peep game, let's be sneaky.
Now you know, very funny characters. Because when I was doing research on them in 2022,
Testing what?
they posted
the
every
fuck are you guys
document of all
testing?
the
That's what I wanna
experiments they
know.
conducted. But now, if you go on their site, they erased everything from 2021 all the way to 2023.
We all know
Coincidence?
Source
I
90
think
has
not.
heard certain things out in the ocean, and then my TikTok gets banned, and then the government shows up my boat. There's too many fucking coincidences. You hear them? They're singing. I fucking love my job, I swear. If you want to see evidence that there was the bone I found during the midst of all this that I brought to the Whaling Museum and they still can't tell me what it is, there's something fishy about that, man. 'Cause
Nah.
look, now, as you can see, it's starting to leak. Like, this is not bone. It's a different type of bone. It's very bendable. It's very malleable. It's usually I keep it in storage, but something's wrong. This isn't normal bone. I can go grab a normal bone and show you what happens over time. Now, this is a whale bone. This is a whale. I believe this is part of a whale's jaw. Very white. Very white. Chalk.
Yeah.
Calcium. This, I've never seen a bone like this. This is not a vertebrae. I have vertebraes. This is leaking, right? It's changing color. I've never seen a bone like this. I took this to the Whaling Museum, where I'm from. I had to wait a month for them to get back to me. Finally got back to me. They had a marine biologist professor there. He said he would look at the bone for me. He looked at it. Within 5 seconds of looking at it, he starts taking out his phone, taking out measuring sticks, asking me where I got this, where I was in the ocean. I was telling him. He's like, I've never seen anything like this. So I get this. He looks at it. He said, I've never seen anything like this in my life. I'm gonna send a picture of this to my colleagues I have, and we'll get back to you. He's like, before you leave, would you mind keeping it here? I said, no, sorry.
The oil company, some oil company drilled down into a portal at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico that led to another dimension, and now all of these monsters are spewing out of it. And there's one of the monsters I noticed looks exactly the same as one of this new species.
August 8th, 2021, Source 90 was able to capture footage of the alleged mermaid. Now, if you look close, it seems a little abstract. but I did a little editing to this video so you guys can see the mermaid perfectly. If you notice, she's majestically swinging her tail left to right, not like traditional mermaids where they go up and down. This was the first sign of a real sighting. Look at the fluidity in her tail as she glides further. And considering how high Sauce was on this ship, she has to be at least 13 feet long. Now I took a shape of the silhouette and I added a dot in the middle of her back. And if you stare at that dot and lean back, you'll start to see the shape appear. Just give it a second. You'll notice the hair flowing. You'll notice the web hands swinging back and forth because they grow at an enormous shape towards the bottom of the fingertips. You'll notice the shoulders. And you'll see the tail, the infamous oar paddle-shaped tail that they associate manatees having.
Mermaids?
I saw a mermaid.
Really?
Yeah.
When?
In Seychelles, Africa.
You saw an actual mermaid?
That's what it was. It was a swimming person.
Really?
Yeah. And
how long ago was this?
I don't know. Ask Will Sylvans. It was
You think there's like a small population of mermaids that are out there?
But anyway, me and this little French boy, and they said don't swim in the lagoon after dark. Everybody's up at the bar, and so everybody's gonna go down. Everybody's kind of racing now. So me and him go down. Me and him get in the water. From a distance, you see something coming like a fucking missile, but it's going fast, and we both kind of stop. And then it turns and it jumps out of the water. And it's maybe at least 10, 12 feet long, man. And it do like this, and it look at both of us and go, whoo. The water was only about this deep. Didn't make a splash or nothing. And then me and him turn the fuck around. We running, and everybody's coming down there laughing, got their drinks in their hand. We're like, no, fuck that. And the little boy in French, and his mom is apologizing to me, saying he has a very vivid imagination. He said, no, bitch, listen. We saw a fish man, and it wasn't like a mermaid. Didn't look feminine at all.
Like a man.
A fucking man. A fucking dude who said, get the fuck out the pool. Basically, he was like, do you know Aquaman? Yeah.
So did it look like a fish
get out the water.
Did it look like a fish person or did it look like a human being?
Came out.
Did it have scales?
It was kind of dark.
Dark like a dolphin?
No, but he had, the back of him was fish. The back of him was fish. His head was humanoid, eyes about so big. Then, if you Google it, the lagoons of Seychelles. From a distance, you see something coming like a...
Now let's take a look at these few videos. Look at the tail ripples, going left and right.
We got another one over here?
Exactly how Tony Woods depicted.
Coming like a fucking missile.
This is also a video clip from Sauce 90's boat.
On each side of the boat?
And look at the other clip that he had. The tail
What are those
going
trails?
left and right.
Something swimming fast underneath that water. Something swimming real fast underneath that water.
Watch a mermaid, a sword, she go down. Jesus Christ, I wish you gone.
Now this is an alleged video from Flatbridge, Jamaica. Pay attention to the ripples in the water after the mermaid leaves. It makes an S shape. If that were a human, wouldn't the legs have breached the water when they dove in the water? How did she dive in the water and not breach the water?
And go, whoa. The water was only about this deep. Didn't make a
splash or nothing. What a coincidence. Now associated with all these sightings were lights. The lights below. If you notice, in Sauce 90's video when he first had the sound and the entity told him to jump for me now, there was a light in the ocean not too far from the boat.
Yo, that shit weird.
Go over it. Go over
Nah, don't go over it. Because if we hit that shit and we get stuck on top of that shit, and it keeps,
oh, that shit's brighter.
It's getting brighter, yeah.
They're pointing around like this.
I don't see nothing. I just see like a flashlight. Oh, and it's moving. Yup. There's somebody there, bro. It's like a light.
Now, based on the commentary, that could have been a scuba diver at night. But let's take a deeper dive into these videos.
You can see the movement. That's the movement of the bow of the boat, because we're on a stern anchor there. And so the bow of the boat, it's a pretty calm night. It's moving up and down, but this thing is making a gradual movement down to the water. And it's like it's showing off. It's not trying to hide. It's not in a hurry.
It's teasing you. And you can see the reflection from, it's a real light. It's reflecting off the ocean. It's right down there. Is it going to go in? And boom, there it's in the water.
And you can see the reflection in the water. I've never seen anything like that. It was unbelievable. And I've talked to people since who work ROVs, who work these sensor equipment, things like that, and they've never seen anything like that either.
Tell by the color of the water. Oh, that's just a light.
It's getting deeper too.
Under the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it getting deeper as it goes down. It's not just sitting on the surface and there's swell between you and whatever it is. That thing's in the water and it's diving.
And it's going deeper, and it reminds me of the green, because it does look green when it goes into the water, and that's because it's like a yellow light, and then the color of the water, like you described earlier. So this thing is in the water.
The bioluminescence off of it, yeah.
And what makes you say it goes deeper?
Well, you can see it. It fades. It doesn't come back up out of the water there. It's equalizing to its surrounding.
This is in the ocean. Okay. This just appeared. When did this appear, Mark?
A minute ago?
This is so weird. Oh my gosh. See, look, there's the stars. You see the stars? I don't know if I should be scared. Oh shit, what was that? It's moving. Oh gosh.
Now this is footage from a sailor in Puerto Rico who captured an entity in a light underneath the water. I'm going to go into detail about this because I want you guys to see the silhouette of the being under the water. Now this is definitely not a scuba diver. If you notice, you can see the shape of a mermaid vertically pushing herself through the water, her tail going back and forth, and her arms still, as her head perches through. She even looks back at the boat and turns her head back to the left. You can kind of see these big black eyeballs. Look closely at the top right of the video. Now this video actually comes from this clip, the full clip of two sailors in Puerto Rico captured a light near the pier in Aguadilla.
Wow, mira eso. Uy, me acerqué.
Mira, empezó en el puente y está en la boya, era la boya. El puente está a mano izquierda, Mira eso, mira. Mira eso. ¿Hay algo ahí? Mira algo ahí. Míralo. Yo no sé qué carajo es eso, dale para atrás. Si no quieres saber. Dale. No quiero saber. No quiero saber, dale. Dale. ¿No es un ovni? No. Dale. Mira ahí. Sí, eso, ¿qué es eso? ¿Hundió?
This is a night diver. Now, the significant difference between the orbs in the water and night divers is that you can see the flashlights. You can even see the shape of their bodies perfectly. And even more so, the movement of the flashlight is extremely different than the orbs ominously flowing in the water. Look at the cone shape from the flashlights. The lights that we saw in the ocean weren't divers. They were spaceships.
A little corona discharge from the bottom. A corona discharge is kind of a high voltage brush, little bluish glow discharge. As it was lifting off the ground, you can hear a slight hiss sound. Now, as soon as it cleared the ground by about 5 or 10 feet, maybe even less than that, the hissing stopped and the blue glow disappeared. So it lifted off quietly and then it hovered silently, if you want to be specific.
Wow.
Were these the same lights that Bob Lazar spoke of? Bluish green lights emitting from the field around the spacecrafts. Was this some type of force field? Or an energy emitting from a frequency? And why were they always in the ocean or in the same vicinity as mermaid sightings? I couldn't help but notice that my research led me down a deep rabbit hole that ultimately put my life in danger. You see, I started to notice that someone didn't want this information getting out, and it was somebody in the government. Now, alongside with these myths and legends, sightings of UFOs and mermaids, ancient technology, reptilians and aliens, I just had to go out there and see for myself if it was real, if they really did exist. Which leads to my story, the Dots and Lions story. This is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down. And I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I found mermaids in the middle of nowhere. On the East Coast America, born and raised in a kayak is where I spend most of my days. Chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool, and just getting some shots with some new camera tools. When a bunch of Coast Guards, they were up to no good. Started making trouble while the waves were good. I had one little sight and my mom got scared and said, "You're selling that kayak, never going back there." I never even heeded whatever she had to say. I just packed my water bag and went up on my way. I knew they existed, I just needed to flick it. But when I heard that song, I said, fuck this, forget it. Don't laugh, yo, this is bad. Didn't know I showed clues to make the government mad. Is this what it takes to get banned overnight? Tick-tock, I ain't right. A whistleblower, now I'm living in fear with unmarked cars in my rear view mirrors. If anything, I would say this was mad weird, but I thought, nah, forget it, cause yo, I ain't scared. I pulled up YouTube about a year too late, and I had to upload for all the commentators. Looked at my following, it was finally clear. The real ones ain't gone, and decided to share. is that coming from? So if everybody just saw that, something poked a hole in my kayak. Look at all that water that just got in here. Way back. That's why I started freaking out, bro. Holy shit.
So this video was recently uploaded by user Dots and Lines, whose account has since been removed. Now, very much like the Source saga, this particular video has really grabbed the internet's attention. Now, he also posted a following video. Check it out.
What is that in the water while the Coast Guard stopped me?
Cleo? I mean, this video, coupled with the siren sounds, really has so many of y'all on here believing this is Cleo, given everything we've gone through with Source. Accounts being taken down, Coast Guards getting involved, what have you. People really are on the edge of their kayaks over this. Now, until he becomes active on his account again, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. What do you think?
Now let's take a closer look at that footage, because I wanted to show you guys in detail what I was explaining, what was looking at me in the water. And some of you are looking at this video on the left and questioning if that's a head behind the boat. But it's not. It's actually the motor. The real head is to the right, all the way in the distance. Now, if you can see here, I told you guys before there was a lighthouse on the horizon. And if you want, I can map it out better for you. The more you zoom in, the more you start to see this head that popped out. And when I was on the water, I saw this head very clearly. It had big black eyes, and it dipped its head back under the water when I pointed at it. Now, you tell me that's a seal, and I'll tell you you're wrong. Because there's no way I heard these sounds, and I had this sighting, and the Coast Guard stopped me for a seal. All right, so I just had to take this shit off the live because y'all always complaining about me not getting no fucking good footage or clear footage. I'm out in the middle of the fucking ocean. But I'm about to fucking go home because y'all got me fucked up, bro. I'm hearing noises out here, and I know I'll be out here looking for these shits for y'all, but I am not fucking with no fucking mermaids, bro. I'm out, bro. I think... Yo, where the fuck is that coming from? So if everybody just fucking saw that, something poked a hole in my fucking kayak. Look at all that water that just got in here on my way back. That's why I started fucking freaking out, bro. Holy shit. Now, some of you may be looking at this like it was fun, but for me it wasn't. You see, not only did my TikTok account get banned, but literally 1 week after the sighting, I was being followed by unmarked cars. And then, 2 weeks after the sighting, my home mysteriously had a fire. Still unknown to this day how it started. We don't know how this fire started, and I don't know who started it. But I do know that I came home just in time to stop that fire. So, all of my tattoo heads out there, I want you guys to see something. Unfortunately, my family and I just had a fire a couple nights ago and I lost everything. But it seems like this thing was able to survive the fire. Now I'm gonna open it, we're gonna see what the inside is looking like, because I am extremely surprised that literally everything in my room was literally everything of mine was gone. That was the only part of the house that had more evidence of mermaids in it. More footage on my Super 8 cameras. Now, when this happened, I was devastated. I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I knew I was being targeted. And I knew that they didn't want this information to come out. So what did I do? I withdrew. I fell for the trap. And I was worried about the unknown watchers that were also pushing the world in a direction that we didn't want it to go. One feud with lies and illusions and cover-ups and hiding people like myself. But before I could be silenced, I had a change of heart. And I started to realize that things would never change if people just bow down and let tyranny take its place. It was time we stood up, and I started with myself. I started to look for all this evidence that I had and put it back out into the world. I wanted people to understand that it wasn't about my life being in danger, and it wasn't about trying to take down any other organizations, but it was about spreading the truth and waking up people, which is what I plan to do with this account. Now, will they delete this? Who knows? But as long as you guys watch it and share it, the truth will always be out there.